less than a year of our operating budget. So it's a cushion, but it's not like, we want to have a financial catastrophe. So cash is good and it's stable. Our investment cash is $1.53 million, which sounds like a lot. And I've heard some members have said, boy, it seems like the church has a lot of money. So why does the church need money? Okay, the $1.53 million, $345,000 of it is in an endowment fund, which we cannot spend the principal of. We can only spend a certain amount of earnings. So that is an endowment. The rest is $1.18 million for capital projects that I think is substantially related to the sale of Marvin that's been banked. I think everyone is aware that our total deferred maintenance spending on things like heating, air conditioning, electrical equipment, et cetera, totals more than $3 million. So $1.1 million is not nearly enough. At a future meeting, I anticipate I'll be describing the final version of the 2026 through 2031 capital budget, where through the hard work of the Building Beloved Community Committee, we actually have a plan to replace all of our key HVAC equipment, upgrade electrical, et cetera, and have all of that done by 2031 and be able to pay for it. But the process, if all goes well, that will end with us having several $100,000 in our capital projects budget, not 1.1 million, but several $100,000. In the meantime, the 1.18 million will all get spent. So, no, our investment cash is currently 1.53 million. We can't spend almost $400,000 of it, and the rest is all going to be spent in the next 18 months as we start to upgrade our HVAC. So, good news, we are not poor, but that investment cash looks bigger than it is. All right, so it looks like everybody's now got the handouts, which is great. Thank you, Pastor Will and Leona. Our net income has got parentheses around it, which means it's negative. Year-to-date income is $44,000 to the negative, and year-to-date net relative to budget, so that's if you net out all of our expenses, operating expenses against all of our revenue, we have a negative 24,681. Now, since I'm the treasurer, you could fairly say, what are you doing? We're running in a deficit. But if you're familiar with church budgets, churches essentially always are running a deficit in June. They tend to have a lot of money come in the back half of the year. And they often have a lot of expenses, like paying for insurance and property taxes and snow removal in January. I'm going to get to that in a minute. That come in the first part of the year. So I would say, and for those who are on the Budget and Operations Committee, they've heard me say this before, I am not nervous about these numbers now. Now what I want to do is to go in, so that's the top line. Now what I want to do is report on a few other lines. So first, we've got revenue in this section here. And the things to point out, the facility use revenue is below budget. And that is not a place that you would like to see you be behind budget, because that's rental income that you expect to be coming in every month. And we've actually got some new renters as well, so that's positive news. The main explanation, there are a couple of renters that are a little behind. It's not a big problem. People are working on it. We've also had some months when Shepherd's Table didn't have the staff, as I understand it, to use the kitchen. And our agreement with Shepherd's Table is they only pay when they use the facility. So we're probably going to end up a little light on total facility revenue this year, but it's not a big problem. And notice that contributions are up. And that's actually unusual for this time of year. And in fact, if you look at this little stewardship heat chart there on the bottom left, you can see that relative to our pledging, we have got 53% of our pledges paid. That's also unusually positive. So we've had some significant pledges that have been paid a little earlier than usual. But our contributions are not just related to that. So our contributions look great. Our pledge giving looks great. So on the revenue side, overall our revenue is positive, even if our facility revenue is a little negative. All right. Now, looking at expenses, a couple of points. One that I made the last time, if you look at this column here, or this graphic, you can see that facility expenses are the biggest bar in all the bars. Not that we're Methodists, we're not in a bar, but you know what I mean. And in fact, facility revenue is 43% of our total budget. The budgeted expenses for facilities are 43% of our total budget. Those of you who are at all familiar with church budgeting, that is an unusually high fraction. Google AI tells me it's typically between 20 and 35%. Those who've been here for a few years know that a few years ago, our facility expenses operating budget was even higher. It was approaching 50%. Things like the decommissioning and portion of the education building have saved us some money. And of course, as part of the Building Beloved Community Project, there will be no education building. We'll have more efficient heating and air conditioning. And so we're anticipating that we hope that in a few years, our facility costs will be a more appropriate fraction of our total operating budget. So we know that's a problem. It's good news for the future, we hope. Don't ask me the exact percent. Pastor Will asks me this every couple of months. We still don't know. We won't even be able to accommodate all of that in our 2027 budget because we will have the education building for a good chunk of 2027. Pastor Will. Yeah, our janitorial contract, though, is going to drop because we are going to be preparing the education building for non-use, and therefore we don't need to clean it in a way that we do now. So thank you, Pastor Will, for that update. Let's see. So regarding why our facility expenses are higher year to date than our budget. So gas and heat are above year-to-date budget, but again, we had to heat the place in the winter, and now we don't. And actually, we've had some weeks when it's not been that hot, so that's good news too. So fingers crossed. So our gas and heat costs are year-to-date ahead of our budget, but we have not. That they're not exceeding what we budgeted for the year. So we could come in for a soft landing. We'll just have to see how it goes. Equipment maintenance, always a bugaboo, and it is running above budget year to date. But again, we have not expended everything we've budgeted for equipment. So we could come in with a soft landing there. Pastor Will may have bad news to share with me later. He says not. So fingers crossed. These surprises do come up. We have one category of facility expenses where we actually have spent all of our money and more already. Does anybody remember what that might be? That's right. We had the week of Snowcrete, so we exceeded our entire budgeted amount, even though we budgeted generously. So let's hope that global warming remembers it's here for the rest of the year, so we don't have to deal with any snow in November and December, to be determined. All right, so that's covering the facility costs. Administrative costs are slightly ahead of budget, and that's really been tied to getting some new streaming equipment, outfitting one of the classrooms, getting some new computers. So just a timing issue. I want to note that we are meeting our obligations for apportionments, the first time in a number of years that we've been doing that. We're on track for that. And I'll finally note programming. We're currently on track for that, but I'll also note that I already reminded you that what we spend on facilities is far above what churches typically spend as a proportion of budget. What we spend on programming is below, as a percentage, not dollar amount, but as a percentage, below what churches typically spend. Hopefully, obviously, as we right-size things over the next several years, we'll be able to invest even more in our programming. I know that's everyone's aspiration, but just wanted to point that out, that we're doing well there. The staff are doing very well, but we would like to spend more than we're currently spending, but not this year because it's not in the budget. So those are my comments on the document, and I am now happy to answer any questions that folks have. Anybody have a question?
Pastor Will mentioned we got a $7,000 grant today. How do you count those kinds of that kind of income?
That is a great question for Julie. Let me think about who our financial manager, who is not here at the moment. Sometimes what you end up doing is essentially covering an operating expense from a grant. So grants don't fall into any of our major categories of revenue. I think that they're probably miscellaneous. Pastor Will just mentioned this particular grant will help offset some of the costs for the ground penetrating radar related to the cemetery, church cemetery study. But a fair question, yes.
I saw they have signs up out there about it being a cemetery. What is the plan for that space? Do you know yet?
We are in negotiations with the State Highway Administration. And the goal is to turn it into a memorial.
Like a park?
Where persons who are interred in the roadway in the right of way can be reinterred. And after this is what's just declared
Pastor Will just said he's happy after we're done with the actual discussion of the financial report. He's happy to answer questions about the cemetery project. Other questions on the year to date? Yes.
As we approach the budget cycle, the end of this cycle, and look forward to 2027, Would it be possible to get a more itemized budget than just these generalized figures?
Well, let's see. So I actually brought a copy of the itemized one in case anybody wanted to see it. I did not bring multiple copies. I'll also warn you that it took Julie Nelson, our financial manager, and Lee Bullis, the last treasurer, several meetings before I could interpret all of it. And my ability to do so accurately is only about 75%. But I suspect that what you're thinking about has largely to do with the operating expenses categories and what we're buying in the operating expenses. And there is no reason why I think we couldn't share operating expenses. We obviously can't share staff salaries and things like that at the individual human being level. Yeah. Understood. Right. And we could, of course, do that on this if it had multiple pages or involved magnifying glasses. So we decided to not do that. But and this is a very timely question because it also relates to suggestions for what else folks would like to see on a regular basis. And we absolutely will make a note that at least we need to make sure that when we discuss our sort of overall 2026 budget and maybe 2026 going into 2027 budget, we can share the specific trajectories for the different program categories, because that's very reasonable. And we are in the midst of working on that right now.
You can also always email Leadership Council at silverspringumcp.org. You can also always email Leadership Council at silverspringumcp.org and request those at any time, just like you can minutes or anything else related to the work of the Leadership Council.
The relative amount spent on program and for what?
Yep, fair enough. Well, if folks would like, I could spend a few minutes going over what I've got right now. If people wanted to hear that, I can't show it to you probably, but I could tell you if you're interested. Would you like me to spend a minute on that? The programming categories. Annual budget for children and family is $10,000, but I think that's understated because we're also using some endowment money to support part of that. Vacation Bible School, $3,000. Youth ministry, that's additional. Youth ministry, $17,500. Hospitality, $3,000. Leadership development, $7,000. Music ministry has a couple of different categories, and some of these are tricky because the operating expenses still show it as operating expense, but in some cases we have gift money that's used for part of that. And that is a particular issue for the music program. So not all of this operating expense, it comes out of the operating revenue. But music ministry has a couple of line items, $7,000 and $18,000. $18,000 for contractor, $7,000 for the core. Those are some of the highlights. of the program categories. If folks have other questions about those, I mean, there's a variety of other program categories in smaller areas, racial justice, LGBTQ justice, food ministry, et cetera. I can go into those if you want. But again, we can make sure we share this in the future. Yeah.
Has the Leadership Council started thinking about the impact of losing the daycare? Once the education wing goes away, that's going to have a significant impact.
Well, not only is the Leadership Council thinking about that, but Pastor Will charged the Budget and Operations Committee to consider all of that for not just 2027, but 2028. So we've made a list of the impacts on various renters over the next 2 years. We obviously don't have an answer for all of those, except remember our operating expenses are going to go down by a substantial amount. So there are some other operating expenses that are likely to go up. But at any event, we are, I would say, thinking about this very seriously, and the Budget and Operations Committee has already sort of gone over what are all the contracts and what's the timing of the impact. Yes, in fact, through next summer is their last year, because that's why we're saving money on on janitorial services, is we're not taking care of the teaching space come August, September. Yes.
Could you tell me why the mailings and the newsletter are under programs?
Oh, to some extent, these are decisions made by our financial manager. They're sort of, well, we can certainly discuss that in the future. My guess is that is a standard way of accounting for churches. So, yes. Yeah.
Standard, and because most of that money goes to support the mailings done by the card ministry and by the grief book ministry that we have. So that's why Julie accounts for it. Yeah, it's because almost all of that is used by program ministries of the church, like our card ministry, when they submit for reimbursement, or for our grief book ministry, when we're purchasing grief books that then get mailed out to families quarterly in the first year following someone's death. I've also not ever been in a church where it's not listed under program, like every congregation I've served, at least.
Please just answer it for me. Closure of the thrift shop. Does the thrift shop, where did it figure in this?
So let's talk about the thrift shop for a second, and the fact that let's talk about the thrift shop for a second, and the fact that that was not a decision made by anybody other than the volunteers who run the thrift store. It was made by Ruth Gocknauer in particular, who closed out the wood shop. It was made by Ruth Gocknauer in particular, who closed out the checking account because she was the only person on the checking account. So let's talk for a second about the fact that the thrift store has operated independently of the church, in the sense that from a budgeting perspective, from an income perspective, the Leadership Council has exercised no authority over it, which is why we never had access to the checking account. I see the face that you're making, Eleanor. So that is not what Ruth told me. So all I know is that Ruth brought a check to the church and proof that she had closed out the account. So that's what I know. The thrift store over the years has provided revenue, had money back to the church from the sales that it has done, right? And we'll celebrate that fully in August. Over $157,000 over the years has been raised by the thrift store. There were a couple of challenges, right? One was that they did not want to be open. This is what I have been told. This is not a decision made by any staff member of this church. And if you want to talk with Ruth or Eleanor about it, Eleanor Organ, I would encourage you to do so. That they were struggling to find volunteers. Ruth in particular felt like she could no longer do it, and I think had a particular sense of ownership over that ministry. And because there are multiple thrift stores now open along the Georgia Avenue corridor that were not open when it opened in 1972. So Grace Episcopal has a thrift store, Montgomery Hills Baptist has a thrift store, the Presbyterian Church just north of that has a thrift store, there's a thrift store in downtown Silver Spring, and so there was a concern that the people weren't benefiting from it in the same way. Again, I would encourage you, this was not a decision made by the Leadership Council, it was not a decision made by the staff of the church. The staff were directed by the ministry leaders as to what was happening with the thrift store. So that's that. I hope that answers the question. I don't disagree. And that doesn't, just because Woodside Thrift Store has closed, doesn't discount the possibility of future ministry that meets the same need, right? So it was an independent organization. That's how it operated. It operated independently. Let those who have ears hear. It operated independently. And we did our best to support it while we could. Again, that doesn't discount the ability to open up, to start new ministry. Again, always making room for the new thing. But what we were directed and told is that the Woodside Thrift Store was closing. Yep.
Thanks, Pastor Will. Yeah, as he explained, Budget and Operations Committee sees nothing related to operating revenue or expenses related to the thrift store. So I learned something new every week about this, and that was one today. Thank you. Let's see, lots of great questions. I'm really glad to receive those. I'm happy to entertain any others. And also any other suggestions for our reporting. I've certainly heard one that we need to come up with a way to periodically share the program budgets in detail. I'm guessing right now we'll in my head, I would be thinking about doing that annually, sort of when we do the report on the 2026 and 2027 proposed budget. And then, of course, if folks have specific questions that they raise, we can speak to those, at these quarterly meetings. But also, the other thing I'm interested in is quarterly enough. Some people think yes, some people think no. But right, because we do these every month, and in fact, we'll try to make sure we get these out in the e-news or something every month. But the stand-up and talk versions, we're thinking about doing quarterly right now. Yes? Here, I want to make sure that, sorry, I didn't make that clear. We might be streaming, so.
No, while you're compiling your list of programs, would it be too much to find out who actually rents our building and where? Because all of us have had the experience of being out in the community, and someone will say, "Oh, we rent space or we meet in your building," and we'd never heard of it before. So it would be nice to be not quite so ignorant about building space.
Yeah, and Pastor Will, I'm assuming that we could include. In our annual sort of budget report, the renters, the different renters that are listed. I don't know that we would necessarily want to list the amounts each renter is paying, but we could certainly list all the renters.
So it's a yes and a no, right? Because there are groups that meet here that do so confidentially. Alcoholics Anonymous, Sex Addiction Anonymous. Those kinds of groups, some of the mental health groups, we're not going to share, even though those would show up on what would normally be a space sharing list. If you're looking for numbers for individuals who are paying rent that's going to show up both in the operating budget that you see, and you can also ask or email any of the staff. Right? So there's nobody trying to keep secrets. If you're not getting information that you're looking for, ask for it. And that's always helpful for us to know what we're not providing.
Thank you, Pastor Will, and thank you for the question. Oh, Bill.
I just wanted to make sure everybody knows that the hard work that Gene and the Budget Operations Committee are doing on our capital budget. We've not had a capital budget in this church for years, and I think it'll really pay off when it'll be a hard document to look at, but it's really, really important work. So thank you to you and the committee for doing that.
Oh, well, thanks, Bill. I mean, the good news is, due to the hard work of the Building Beloved Community Committee and Bill and Allison, the final 5-year capital budget will not look as horrific as it would otherwise, because we actually we're projecting, a strong final result where we've updated all of our important mechanical, electrical, and plumbing equipment, and have an appropriate amount of reserves in our capital budget going forward. So, yeah, the expenses look scary, but the bottom line looks okay right now. Fingers crossed. Thank you, Bill. All right. Well, thanks everyone for your participation, your great questions and comments. Thanks, Pastor Will, as always, for your hard work in being here to answer a number of the questions that I could not. And hope everyone has a great rest of your Sunday.
Thank you, Aaron. I just wanted to flag for folks some things to be aware of that